Zadrizes buzdaris gosdau.
Hey! Welcome to Sir Hunt's Reviews. My name's Mark. In this video, it's a bit more like how the format will be when I'm doing my live streams every Sunday at around maybe 10 to 11. Depends on how long House of the Dragon Season 1 episodes are, but this will be very similar to the format I'll be doing then. Maybe I'll have a green screen. Maybe I'll try to set up my stuff behind me. But anyway, I wanted to do a sort of like a study guide or a season 1 viewing guide for House of the Dragon. I haven't done one in like 6 months to a year, and this is long overdue. Please, if you've already slapped a like on this video, the like goal is going to be 69. Get it? And then also subscribed. If you've already done those two things, consider checking out my Patreon over on patreon.com/SirHuntReviews. Basically, what that does is it just helps me combat YouTube from delisting my videos. If you'll notice, House of the Dragon is a month away, and my views still haven't quite returned to what they used to be when Game of Thrones was on the air. So Patreon is just my way to combat that. But if you can't do any of that, the best thing you can do to anybody you're a fan here of on YouTube is to watch their videos. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Thank you so much for watching. Now, the very first thing that I want to discuss for this video is how does this start? And really, this starts all the way back during Aegon the Conqueror's reign, but that's not where this show really starts, right? So we recently found out that Aegon the Conqueror and his motivation for taking over Westeros, right? He did fight a few battles out in Essos before ultimately conquering Westeros, but that just kind of bloodied him, right? He was testing his mettle, so to speak, before the ultimate conquering of Westeros. Now, like I said, it does start there, but for this specific chapter of this story, that being the Dance of the Dragons, it starts with this guy, King Jaehaerys. He was known as the Old King for many different reasons. The main one being is that he was literally the longest reigning Targaryen monarch in history. And because he offered the realm such a prosperous time and lived so long, literally outlived all of his own children. For the most part, there was still Sarah Targaryen, who started a whorehouse across the Narrow Sea. When she had a falling out with Jaehaerys, she basically took on multiple lovers, and Jaehaerys was like, no, you can't do that. You're supposed to marry this person. Go to your room. I'm going to send you away to the Silent Sisters. So Sarah Targaryen steals away across the Narrow Sea. And how that's kind of relevant to this show is that Alicent, who marries King Viserys, as you can see up there in the left-hand corner. That's Rhaenyra's mother. To the right of him, Emma Arryn, right? After she dies giving birth to one of Viserys' sons, he remarries Alicent, and that's a key connection because, like I said, Alicent used to spend so much time with the old king, he would mistake her for his daughter Sarah. Now, obviously, King Jaehaerys is a Targaryen, and Sarah had the traditional Targaryen good looks. Alicent does not look like a Targaryen. She's beautiful, right? Olivia Cook's beautiful, right? But because of this, in my opinion, it's kind of hinted that Jaehaerys got a little bit senile towards the end, right? But the main point to take away from all that I just said is that Jaehaerys outlived all of his heirs. So, in 101 AC, that's this image you see right here. Initially, I thought the Septon behind him was Septon Bath, but he died, Septon Both died in 99 AC. So this was, literally 2 years before the Great Council 101 AC. Now, it's still possible that for the TV show, because he died so near to this, and then Jaehaerys died in 103 AC, because Septon Bath died so near to this, that could very well be him, but I just don't think it is. It's just a high Septon. So what ends up happening at this Great Council in 101 AC, now it's insane. There were a bunch of dragons here, but more insanely is the amount of people that were at Harrenhal for this Great Council. Basically, what Jaehaerys did was have a bit of a democracy. He said, I'm not going to pick my heir. I'm going to allow the great lords in Westeros to pick their heir. And as you can see from the trailer, we see some of those heirs declaring for Rhaenyra when Viserys, Jaehaerys' grandson, names her his heir because he has sort of a same problem. Not that he outlives all of his sons, but that he doesn't literally have any. And then when he does, Rhaenyra is still his heir, right? So Emma Arryn never gives him any male children that live past infancy, right? So Jaehaerys allows the great lords in Westeros to pick who they want to rule them upon his death. Now, what's interesting is that there are several claimants that are brought forward, but the most prominent ones are Rhaenyra, who, if you look over to the right, is the son of Corlys and Rhaenys. And then also, if you look over all the way to the left, not the Kingsguardman with the helmet, but Viserys, right? So those are the two most prominent claimants at this great tourney, or I'm sorry, at this great council of 101 AC. Rhaenyra, the biggest problem with him, even though he rode a dragon, was that he had never shown any interest in girls. He much preferred the company of squires and being around boys of his age. Now, initially, you may think, well, that's probably a normal thing because he's, a little boy. They probably aren't interested in girls. No, it's not that. It's that he never showed interest. Even when he was of age, he still did not want anything to do with pussy. So, because of that, the realm was like, he's gay. And also, he's really young, right? So Viserys, on the other hand, has multiple children, right? At one point, rode Balerion the Black Dread, who's the mount of Aegon the Conqueror. Nobody else rode Balerion except for Arya, but that doesn't really count, right? There are a few King Maegor that rode Balerion, but we won't mention him for this video, right? So Viserys is just an all-around better candidate. And because of this, he's chosen. Ultimately, he becomes the king. Now, in the books, I don't know if they're going to do this for the TV show, because it's kind of like, it's interesting that George decided to do it that way. But basically, what happens is there's, rivalry between Rhaenyra Velaryon and Viserys Targaryen. And because of this, or not because of that, but, well, yeah, pretty much as a result of that, Daemon ends up amassing a bunch of forces and is said to be ready to... It's weird to speak that way, but there's no POVs in Fire and Blood, right? It's all several different characters' accounts, some of whom weren't even alive during the events of the story, right? But that's besides the point. So Daemon amasses these forces, getting ready to defend the rights of Viserys, just in case the Great Council of 101 AC decided to pick Rhaenyra Velaryon, right? Obviously, King Viserys is the one who's picked. Now, the reason why I say that's interesting, and I don't know if they're going to keep it the same for the TV show, is that shortly thereafter that, maybe about 7 to 10 years later, Daemon goes and conquers the Stepstones with Corlys. So even though he was about to fight Corlys, he goes and... has a war with him down in the Stepstones. Very much, if Corlys did not help Daemon when he was down in the Stepstones, Daemon probably wouldn't have won the war. It was Corlys' ships and his great naval fleet that allowed Daemon to conquer the Stepstones, and he's the one who actually crowned Daemon as king of the Stepstones. So, I guess they will keep that in canon for the TV show, but because it shows you how much of a hothead Daemon is, right? So that's really what kicks off the events to this story, right, is that we have this really old king who outlives most of his heirs, and he allows the great lords in Westeros to pick an heir, and that's something that usually never happens, but they pick Viserys, and in that great council of 101 AC, one of the most important things to take away from it is just that it sets a precedent. And there are laws in Westeros, but not in the traditional sense, literally, in the traditional sense, right? Like, tradition is as good as established laws in Westeros. And what the Great Tourney of 101 AC did was establish that a male heir, regardless of age, viability, sexual preference, dragon riding abilities, prowess, physically and mentally, besides all of that, they will always come before a female heir. Even if she's older, more mentally inept, not missing a leg, can ride dragons better, can hunt, can hawk, can fish, it doesn't matter. A male heir will always come first. That is what the Great Council of 101 AC at Harrenhal, that of which we've seen in the trailer, that is what this council meeting established. And because of this, when Viserys names Rhaenyra his heir, he's going against everything that got him established. This is where the biggest, I think, maybe misunderstanding that I see for fans online that are genuine fans of the show, but you could just tell from their rhetoric and the way they comment that they haven't read Fire and Blood, or they kind of just glazed over it and kind of skipped some of the parts and thinking like automatically, oh shit, I'm going to be Team Blacks all the way. Rhaenyra is 100% right. King Viserys named her his heir. That is the law. The king named the next person to wear the crown. That's it, right? So that's why I'm trying to take so much time to explain this part, is because that's not exactly the case. In fact, Rhaenyra is going against established traditions in Westeros. Several of her advisors tell her not to do this, and guess what? She still does it, right? So everybody's wrong. Everybody's also right at different times, but everybody's wrong. So let's not get stuck on King Viserys did the right thing. He basically did the wrong thing and literally caused this war. But it's not all his fault. It's also Jaehaerys' fault, because Jaehaerys should have made a better type of law or established tradition, in that he should have just named Viserys his heir. He probably would have done so. Like, Rhaenyra is his great-grandson, but proximity favored Viserys. The old king is his grandfather, right? And at one point, his father was the heir. So, kind of makes sense. King Jaehaerys should have just named King Viserys his heir, and then when King Viserys did it, that would have been the established law. The king names his heir, not necessarily the male heir, or the most viable, or the High Lords in Westeros get to pick and choose who they want to back for the Iron Throne, right? So that's kind of where it starts at. Okay, so the next thing that I want to discuss, and sorry if I'm being long-winded, these stories are very complex, so I have to kind of edit these videos in the format of them being like an onion, right? So the next thing I want to explain is the relationship dynamic between Rhaenyra and Alicent. Just as a quick precursor, if you're unaware, Rhaenyra is the daughter of King Viserys, and he names her his heir. We see that in the trailer. The entire realm, for the most part, pledges their fealty to her. And when it comes time to back her, it might be, 20-some years later, but that's ultimately what they should do, and they don't, right? And I kind of just explained how that's not 100% correct. But the dynamic between the two of them is, if you'll notice in the trailer, when they're played by the younger actresses, Rhaenyra is going to be played by Millie Alcock, and Queen Alicent's character is going to be played by Emily Carey, right? So when they are played by the two younger actresses, the dynamic between them is very much best friends, right? Alicent may or may not have married the king, but at this point, she hasn't had any sons with him. So Alicent herself hasn't been called into, question the legitimacy of Rhaenyra's children. They're just not really a threat to each other, because even though Rhaenyra is going to be, wear the crown after her father, like I said, Alicent isn't immediately put off by her, because they are, for one, similar in age, at least for the TV show, and for two, their proximity to each other would make them sort of just be close, right? So we know that, with Sansa and her friends, right, usually typical noble people have higher-ups as their friends. So the proximity of Alicent being at the royal court, right, with her father, Sir Otto, and her being the chambermaid for King Jaehaerys, and Rhaenyra growing up, obviously being a Targaryen, a member of the blood, a member of the royal family, the two of them are going to interact and they're going to be close. But what happens is Alicent ends up giving Viserys not one male heir, but three, right? She gives him three valuable male heirs. They all have the Targaryen good looks, even though she doesn't. They all ride dragons, but guess what? King Viserys, although he is very amiable in nature and can be swayed to the left and to the right depending on who his council members are and who's whispering in his ears, he does not go back and name his sons Aegon the Two, Aemon One Eye, and Daeron the Daring. He doesn't ever name them his heirs. He says, I already took care of that. I don't give a shit, even though she's having bastard children. I mean, he kind of does, but he ultimately ignores it. And this is what drives the wedge further and further in between Alicent and Rhaenyra. So initially, of course, because of proximity, they're going to be friendly with each other. They have similar interests, right? Rhaenyra is a member of House Targaryen. House Hightower is sworn to House Targaryen. Of course, at this time, before Alicent marries Viserys and becomes the queen, right, she's going to be nice to Rhaenyra. That's very much what happens. So their relationship, about 6 or 7 episodes into season 1, will take a quick, dire, and sour turn. And that's ultimately going to be in that scene that I just showed you right there. That's right after the boys have their squabble. So basically, Daemon is burying his wife at Driftmark. We see glimpses of it in the very first teaser. We see that sarcophagus being pushed into the ocean. That is how House Velaryon will bury their dead, right? Because of that, Vhagar, who is one of the dragons that was ridden by Visenya, one of Aegon's sister wives, right? This dragon was around during the conquering of Westeros 130 years before the events of this story, right? Biggest dragon in the land, an old hoary bitch is what she's called, right? Is stolen by Aemon One-Eye. This is before Aemon becomes Aemon One-Eye, right? So he basically sneaks out in the middle of the night at Driftmark. He's egged on by Viserys. Again, Viserys does something to fuck up, right? He basically says, look, Aemon, you don't have a dragon yet, but don't worry. We're going to go to Dragonstone. Perhaps in the hatchery, you'll be able to find you an egg or a little baby dragon, and then you'll have your own dragon, right? It's basically what he says to Aemon, and Viserys kind of gets a bit of a chuckle. So obviously Aemon, being bold and every bit of Targaryen princeling, right, a dragon knight, sneaks out and goes and claims Vhagar. Vhagar gives out a massive roar, and Aemon successfully mounts her and rides her around a few times before ultimately landing and being attacked by Rhaenyra's children, right? Aemon's bigger and a better fighter, so he gets the best of them, starts beating them savagely, and then Lucerys, Rhaenyra's second-born son, pulls out, as we can see in the trailer, pulls out the dagger that is worn by Viserys, that is used to kill the Night King, that is used to attempt to kill Breanne, but ultimately that slashes Catelyn's finger, kills Littlefinger, right? That same knife is then used to slash out Aemon's eye. And then he becomes Aemon One-Eye, still continues being a badass fighter, trained under the tutelage of Kristen Cole, right? So I'm getting a little bit off topic. One of the, I kind of explained the dynamic between Alicent and Rhaenyra a little bit, and I've made plenty of videos. Check the links down below in the description if you want more of a character breakdown between the two of them. But the next thing that I wanted to talk about was some of the more major events of season 1, and I won't spend too much time talking about this because it's kind of obvious. They're showcasing us some of the most major events, right? It's going to be Daemon conquering down in the Stepstones. This is how he forges that crown where he's named King of the Narrow Sea, right? This is after he's known as Prince of the City in Lord Fleabottom and King's Landing, where he's ultimately offered multiple positions on the Small Council before being switched off to the Gold Cloaks. And that happens because Sir Otto basically tells King Viserys, like, yo, look, he's not doing good on the Small Council. Put him on the Gold Cloak. So he puts him on the Gold Cloaks. Daemon reforms the Gold Cloaks, gives them matching weapons, makes them way more formidable, becomes Lord Fleabottom in a sense. Like, that's kind of an insult, but ultimately he delights in getting his hands dirty in crime and punishment in the Street of Silk, in the lower parts of King's Landing, mostly Fleabottom, right? And because of this, that's what makes him ultimately able, or at least sort of, obviously him being a Targaryen, having the backing of King Viserys and having a dragon Caraxes is what makes him ultimately able to go and conquer the Stepstones. But that's going to be another plot point before we really kind of see him, get into the battle at the Stepstones. So that'll be one. So one of the major events of season 1 will be Daemon conquering the Stepstones, and another one will be before Daemon conquers the Stepstones will be him reforming the Gold Cloaks. And then for Rhaenyra, two of the things she will be doing is making tours of Westeros after she's named the heir, right? We've seen leaked images of her with Alicent, Emily Carey, and Millie Alcock are the actresses, right? We've seen Syrax, or the CGI version of it, in the leaks. And in that, it's basically from the books, right? This may be the hunt that she goes on with Kristen Cole, but it could also be part of her touring the Seven Kingdoms. She does this to sort of help people pledge fealty to her. She does it once, right? So this image that could be one of the events, but we do know that she does go on a hunt, and part of that is being seen with her dragon and Queen Alicent at the time. And then another major event for her is going to be the Black Council. She's named, at least to her party and all of the people loyal to her, the Queen of Westeros. And what I mean by that is that basically the Black Council happens and Daemon names her the heir, the protector of the realm, right? The rightful ruler of Westeros. And to sort of like juxtapose that, Aegon too is crowned in the Dragon Pit shortly before the Black Council. So when Viserys' death happens, Alicent keeps it a secret for about a week, so she's able to have the jump on things. The Greens have a massive advantage because of this, and Aegon too is named with Aegon the Conqueror's crown and Blackfire and Sunfire, the most beautiful dragon of all time, right? Debate me down below if you don't believe me. It's literally, the book says Sunfire is the most beautiful dragon ever seen on the planet, right? All of those things are in Aegon's favor. But what's not in his favor is that the realm, 15, 20 years prior to that, had just pledged fealty to Rhaenyra. So one of the big things, the two big things that will happen is she'll be named the heir and she'll become the queen. Those will be two arcs for Rhaenyra. And then another arc, or two more arcs for King Viserys, is the first one's going to be obviously that massive reveal that we got with Aegon, knowing about the threat up north coming, and then we've seen the Valyrian table reconstruction in King Viserys' solarium, right? He's going to have dragon dreams. It's very clear. He says in the trailer, I had a dream. I put all my children on the throne, and all the dragons were at once, right? You caused the dance of the dragon. You and Jaehaerys, you and your grandpappy. But it's just it'll be interesting to see kind of how they handle his ability to have dragon dreams, right? Any Targaryen that is possessed of these dragon dreams and these like premonitions, whatever you want to call them, is usually pretty melancholic, and it appears as though that's going to be one of the major things, or themes rather, with Viserys. It's possible that he could get visions of what happens with Daenerys and Khal Drogo in the funeral pyre. It's possible that he could see what happens when Aegon III eventually sits the heir and all the dragons die. Maybe he sees a mix of those. That's typically how visions work. Is like a lot of the Targaryens, when they're seeing visions of Daenerys in the books, they think it's them. So, for instance, Egg from Duncan Egg walks into a funeral pyre because he thinks that he's Daenerys and he's going to come out with dragons reborn. At least that's my theory. A lot of people have that theory too. But that'll be one of his arcs for season 1 with Viserys. It'll be dragon dreams, how they affect him, and then his second arc will be, spoiler alert, his death. Right? He starts to get sickly. He's cut by the Iron Throne. We see that in the actual trailer. And then, ultimately he ends up dying, and his death kicks off really the start of this story. Now, lastly, because I feel like this video is pretty long, if you like the longer type of content, let me know down below in the comment section. But ultimately, I just wanted to kind of wrap this up by saying who I think will have the best arc. I'm going to have to go with what George R. Martin has said, and that's King Viserys. He said multiple times in his Not a Blog post and in his interviews that he didn't really give that much thought to Viserys. He was kind of a means to an end, the guy in between the Old King and the Dance of the Dragons, right? From what Ryan Condal and Miguel Sapochnik and Paddy Considine has done with this character, King Viserys, in my opinion, I haven't even seen it yet. I've heard things. I had someone who was at the premiere tell me literally everything that happened in a message, so I kind of know, right? But at least from the first episode, King Viserys is going to have the best arc throughout the first season. It may even rival Ned's from Game of Thrones season 1. And then another thing, I think the best death of this season 1, like, it'll be interesting to see if they stick with canon where, like, this person dies at this event. Game of Thrones did that for the most part until they ran out of source material, and then they mixed and matched, and then even before that they gave certain characters, other characters, deaths and arcs from the books. So it'll kind of be interesting to see, but I think one of the deaths, so to speak, that I think will be the most crazy for this for this first season, and it'll be pretty interesting for the story, will be and this is kind of cheating, but I feel like I've ranted my brain out because all of these videos are unscripted, and because of that, I kind of just talk until I can't think of anything. Like, I have notes, I have a guideline, but ultimately, Rhaenyra will have one of the best arcs, but I think death-wise, the characters who die that make up the progression of the first season. So, like, that being Lena, that being like, we're obviously going to have Rhaenyra's death. I don't know how it looks like we see they're going to do what happens in the books from what the duel that's happening, right? Carl Corey, from the trailer, the clips that we get. But I guess I don't even know what I'm trying to get at. This is a really good point to wrap this video up. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully my main goal in this video was to just enlighten you a little bit more, or to just get you hyped the fuck up for House of the Dragon. It's going to be here literally by the time, maybe if you watch this video early, we're still like a little less than a month away, but if you're watching this a little bit later, this is the month the show is coming out. So make sure that you're subscribed and that you have your notifications turned on. Like, I'm about to go in overdrive. In August, I'm probably going to upload every day until the show comes out. Or if not, every other day. So just make sure you have those notifications turned on and make sure you're subscribed so that way you can get fire content. If you enjoyed my videos, thank you for watching. Thank you so much to every single member of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/SirHunsReviews. And thank you again to you for watching. Just slap a like on this. The like goal is going to be 420. My name's Mark. Along night in Zaldrizas Postari Ixos Daor. You know what? I've been looking at that thing back there, and I haven't done this in a while, so just give me a second. What can I play? I didn't even point the mic at it. Zaldrizes Muzdari Ixos Zaldrizos Daor Muzdari Ixos. I fucked up this song. Bye. Thanks for watching.